Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Riley McManus. Just when it felt like we were in the clear, another heavy snowfall has hit Thunder Bay and the surrounding region. This latest spring storm brought more school bus cancellations, power outages, and highway closures. Vasilios Bellos reports.
The heavy wet snow started coming down late Wednesday night and carried on into the early afternoon, leaving this car under some big tree branches that snapped overnight. The storm also caused power outages, with Hydro One reporting over 60 outages at one point, affecting more than 2,500 customers. And while city plows were quick to tackle snow buildup on local streets, motorists were still dealing with a slippery and slushy drive, including on Thunder Bay highways. O.P.P Constable Faith Ling describes what they were dealing with.
So we have had a few motor vehicle collisions this morning that I've attended to myself. Some of the vehicles have been left in the ditch due to the hazardous nature of the highways, being left to be towed out later, and some have been removed at this time. The highways are wet right now, but they will freeze. So just be mindful when you're driving to drive carefully and reduce your speed and drive according to conditions.
Regional highways were also heavily impacted by the storm, leading to long lineups for those traveling west of Thunder Bay. There was a lengthy closure of several highways, including Highway 17 between Chappaqua and the Manitoba border. As the snow fell in Thunder Bay, the shovels and snowblowers came out yet again, and while many are frustrated, there is some optimism that the worst is past.
Oh, I got up around 3 o'clock and I seen it coming down. I goes, oh no, not again. Oh, well, what are you going to do, eh? Just put up with it and hopefully the weather changes.
It's wet and hard. I didn't even bother getting the snowblower out today because it's not worth the frustration. Plus, I get my steps in this way.
It's like the snowblower is definitely chugging along, so it's not having the greatest time right now, but so far so good.
While there is more snow in the forecast for Friday, it does look like things are going to clear up for the long weekend, with Thunder Bay residents no doubt hoping this was the last big snowfall of the season. Vasilios Bellos, TBT News.
A critical milestone has been reached for building roads and developing the Ring of Fire. Premier Doug Ford joined leaders from Marten Falls and Webequie First Nations today for an announcement on the Northern Road Link. The two communities will be submitting the terms of reference to guide the work done in the environmental assessment for the proposed access roads. Corey Nordstrom has the details.
The Northern Link roadway will be a vital transportation connection to the First Nation communities in the north, connecting them to the jobs and opportunities of tomorrow.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford was on hand for the day's announcement, which his government is calling a historic moment for the Ring of Fire. Marten Falls and Webequie First Nations are filing a terms of reference for the environmental assessment on the Northern Road Link. That project would open up the Ring of Fire mineral deposits to development by linking a pair of roads previously planned by each First Nation, the Webequie Supply Road to the Ring of Fire and the Marten Falls Access Road to the provincial highway network.
Start of a journey for us into economic reconciliation for Marten Falls First Nation and our neighboring Matwa First Nation communities.
The proposed terms of reference will help generate the information for the communities to make an informed decision on what needs to be done in the environmental assessment process.
We also will use our homelands for hunting, trapping, and harvesting to supplement our diet with protein from the land such as caribou, moose, geese, and berries. So we are very careful in our environmental stewardship responsibilities.
Road construction is still a ways away. After further feedback, the First Nations will await a decision from the Minister of the Environment. The government is looking to invest in minerals for electric vehicle production, touting this as a win for the communities and the economy.
For energy corridors, for a roadway that will help move community members back and forth to city centers, for other things like health services and economic activity.
Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Turning to COVID-19, there's one more patient being treated at the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center than there were yesterday. There are now 18 people in hospital with the virus, while the number of patients in the ICU has dropped from 5 to 4. The hospital's occupancy rate is now at 101.5%, while the occupancy rate inside of intensive care unit has fallen below 73%. New Ontario COVID-19 modeling suggests that COVID-19 cases in the province may have reached their peak. However, experts say uncertainty around the numbers of confirmed cases makes it harder to be sure. As Siobhan Morris tells us, hospitalizations will likely to continue to rise in the coming weeks.
There are signs in our wastewater that community transmission of COVID-19 is leveling off. But the science table warns hospitalizations could be a different story. The group projects that 3,000 people with the virus will be admitted next month.
This wave will have a lower hospital occupancy than the last wave, which would be excellent news. And there is even more uncertainty regarding ICU admissions.
Dr. Uni is relatively confident fewer people will be in ICU. The projection is for about 500 COVID-positive patients in intensive care. At the peak of the fifth wave, that number was above 600. The government is adamant that with more beds and other resources, hospitals will be okay.
With the staff that's been trained and with the rest of the work that's happening, we are sure that we will be able to handle any increases.
The Premier is open to advice to extend mandatory masking in settings like transit and hospitals.
I'm going to listen to the advice of the Chief Medical Officer, and which I always have, and I'm waiting for his recommendation. And once he gives me the recommendation, then I'll be able to answer that.
His approach heading into the long weekend?
Stay cautious. If you're having 15 people over, put your mask on, right? Like it doesn't hurt.
Dr. Uni also recommends avoiding crowds and working from home if you can.
We're just talking about a few weeks, especially if this peak in wastewater is actually real and not just a fluke.
The mayor of Toronto has been forced to work from home. In a tweet, John Tory writes that he tested positive for COVID-19 this morning, that he's grateful to be fully vaccinated to give him the best chance at a quick recovery. Tory received his booster just before Christmas and is eligible for a fourth dose next month. The mayor's positive test comes the day after attending several public events, including with young cancer patients from Ukraine and their families. Tory describes his symptoms as extremely mild.
A shortage of long-term care beds at the Mino-Yawin Health Centre in Sioux Lookout was a subject of discussion at Queen's Park today. And MPP Sol Mamakwa says that action, not words, is needed. The NDP member for Kiiwetinoong called on the province to address the need for more long-term care beds in his riding, saying elders are being placed in institutions hundreds of kilometers away. The Minister of Long-Term Care responded, saying beds have already been approved.
Speaker, Mino-Yawin has been asking for years for these desperately needed long-term care beds. I know this government listens, but when is this government going to hear us?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the question from the honourable member. I've actually already approved an allocation of 76 new beds in Kiiwetinoong and Mino-Yawin.
Mino-Yawin CEO Heather Lee said in a statement that while the 76 beds were approved by the previous Liberal government and promised again by the current government, there has been no progress on capital or operational funding needed to operate the new beds. She says they could operate if the government were to approve the same funding model that supports their existing 20-bed facility. With Easter celebrations starting tomorrow, the district's medical officer of health has worries that the holiday can coincide with the sixth wave hitting Thunder Bay. It's been 3 years since locals were able to celebrate Easter in all of its usual glory. The annual Easter egg hunt in the East End is set to make a return tomorrow. However, the event has to be moved from Cherry Park to the Slovak Legion parking lot due to sloppy weather conditions. There's also a number of events planned by local churches. Dr. Janet DeMille says unfortunately it all comes as a sixth wave has reached the city after spreading throughout much of the province.
I am concerned about the timing of the long weekend coming up and the fact that many people will be getting together to celebrate with their families or to worship services, for example. And those will be settings where Omicron, especially the highly transmissible BA2 version of Omicron, can spread very, very quickly.
DeMille recommends masking and keeping distance between others if you do gather in person. She also says, if possible, people should try to attend church services online. The Ford government is investing in the health and safety of workers here in the north. A $5.5 million grant was announced today for groundbreaking workplace health and safety research at Lakehead University. The funding will directly support LU's Enhancing Prevention of Injury and Disability at Work Research Institute. Researchers there are looking into a number of areas, including reducing mental health stigma in the workplace and designing injury prevention programs for vulnerable workers in Northwestern Ontario. The grant will also allow for the hiring of 11 new researchers. But perhaps the most exciting part of the announcement, according to the Research Institute Director, Vicki Kristman, is now the greater connection the facility has with the Ministry of Labour.
There are 5 existing research institutes within the ministry that the ministry funds and that are part of a research partners table. We get to be part of that table now, so that's really exciting because the research that we conduct now, we have a first-hand opportunity to put it in the hands of policymakers, which is invaluable for when you're conducting research and you want it to have an impact.
The funding will support the Institute's work for the next 5 years. The family of late Goyce Kakememik and Oshki Wenjak Education Institute have come up with a fitting way to honor the life of the influential leader from this region. Kakememik passed away in December at the age of 73. The former Nan Deputy Grand Chief played an instrumental role in developing a number of educational programs and creating better learning environments for Indigenous youth. Today, the Goyce Kakememik Student Bursary Fund was announced, and it's designed to lessen the financial barriers for Indigenous students pursuing academics or the trades through a pair of bursaries worth $1,500 apiece. Goyce's wife Lucy and son Jonathan were joined by friends and family for today's announcement.
He believed in acknowledgement and support, and when he passed, we knew that we needed to keep that ideals going. So we approached Oshki, and they're ready. And today is the result of that beginning of the relationship. I'm looking forward to see what we could do, and it's important that we keep supporting each other.
Kakememik says he and the family will work closely with the Oshki Wenjak Institute to identify potential students who could best benefit from the bursaries.